runtime data fetching in Gatsby, but it's a bit of a mouthful, right? So just call it Gatsby data fetching. So usual format for a talk, give a bit of a description about yourself. So I'm Scott, I've been a web developer since 2018. Before that, I was like an analyst developer for financial organisations for 10 years. I'm married, I've got a wife and a daughter. That's not them. That's just for illustration purposes, in case you had a hard time understanding what a family looked like. That's not them either. That's no. Okay, cheap gags out of the way. But one more thing, actually, I'm a cat dad. So sorry about this. Sorry, Firefox isn't letting me go full screen for some reason. So I'm a cat dad. I work for a place called Kamarama. It's an ad agency. As part of Accenture Interactive now. I work in a department called Creative Products. And we deal with clients like the Army, Lidl, Guide Dogs for the Blind, and we do like large businesses for like business tools for BT and EDF. We're using Gatsby in production for a couple of apps. I can talk to you about them after this talk, if you're not running off. So a couple of things we've done for production in Gatsby. We've got a site called City to Sea, which is like it was a gift to a charity trying to raise awareness about people flushing wet wipes down the toilets. Don't do that. And we did like a style guide for Aberdeen Investments, which was a style guide in Gatsby. So, warning, just nowhere near the sort of detail of Laura and Ilesh's slides. This is as good as it's going to get, sorry. So, but there is excessive use of GIFs, memes, and emoji. So, after talking to you all, I mean, I don't really think I need to do this poll, but it's going to determine the rest of the talk. So it's the same talk regardless. So I mean, who uses Gatsby at work? As a raise of hands. One person, two persons use Gatsby at work. Right. So who gets data from an API to populate the Gatsby templates? Yep. Okay. Who's heard of the term the content mesh? Cool. Okay, so data in Gatsby, Ilesh did a great primer on it. Let's just go and give like another brief primer. And basically, Gatsby is like it's like a compile target for the browser for all of your styles, your APIs, and just for building your website. And then that's compiled, put on a CDN somewhere, so it's just there when you access it. So really fast sites as default. Yeah, that's where I was going to talk about the content mesh. Basically, it's talking about Gatsby as, like I said, like a compile target for things like it allows you to pull data from various sources, CMS data, your APIs, and your Markdown. Like I said, all pre-compiled, and then what happens when that data needs to be updated is you need to rebuild the site or do stuff at runtime. So that's pretty much what we're going to talk about. So APIs, Gatsby loves APIs. So there's three, obviously there's more than three, but there's sort of three documented ways to get data into a Gatsby site. So there's build time using the Gatsby data layer, which is you predefine your data in like a GraphQL query, and when your site builds, it pulls that information in, populates your site for you. And there's I'll be saying plugins a lot. Basically, there's a plugin for everything in Gatsby. So for any of your third-party APIs you want to bring in data for, there's usually a plugin for it. So there's build time using the Gatsby data layer, and there's build time outside of the data layer. But basically, you can hit either a REST endpoint or a GraphQL endpoint and build your stuff from the endpoint rather than from importing it into Gatsby and then building it on your client. Cool. So and then there's runtime. So when you've got your site up and running and it's not a site rebuild, you can get some data via an API, but obviously it's going to be via Axios or the browser fetch API. Okay, so I didn't start the timer, but that's pretty much the talk. So we're going to take a look at basically just some of those examples I've just spoken about in the Gatsby default starter. So we've got some endpoints, we've got some GraphQL endpoints for the build time and the runtime stuff, and we've also got a REST API where we can query some information from that too. So let's take a look. So I'm doing what I was doing here, just scooching down. Let's turn this off. Let's try and find code. Cool. So let's talk about Gatsby Node. Hang on. What we're going to do first. Okay, so Gatsby source GraphQL. For those not familiar with Gatsby, there's a lot of these configuration files here. The ones we're going to be looking at is the config. It's where you add all your information for your plugins and you configure them, as you would do in a config file. Here we've got the Gatsby source GraphQL plugin. And here I've just configured it for the Rick and Morty GraphQL endpoint, which someone's kindly put together for us. And that's it really for that part. And then that gets brought into the Gatsby data layer at build time, and we can start querying that with the GraphQL API in Gatsby. So if you look at the pages here, and this is for Rick and Morty, so that is build time data. And with Gatsby, you have sort of you can put the queries in the JS, and then this is stripped out at compile time, and then that's used to bring your data in your data layer. So here we have we've got our Rick and Morty GraphQL query defined, and this is just going to get some basic information from this endpoint, and then this Gatsby query here is what comes into our page here in the data. So we're destructuring out the characters from the Rick and Morty query here, and then classic React, we're just mapping over the characters, and then we're just going to render out our data. So where is that? Have I got an example of it? No. Let's go here. Let's open some 8,000. Cool. So this is the build time data example. So you did see that flash there of the images coming in. It's basically because I didn't have time to configure Gatsby image, which would put in placeholders, and you'd have like a traced SVG in place, so you wouldn't have all of your information shifting about. And yeah, you've got your Rick and Morty data, which is right in there at runtime. So and here's the actual output from that query. So with that done, we can take a look at a runtime data example. Look at that. Not sure what the Wi-Fi is like here. Right, so our runtime data, like I said, we're going to use Axios. We can use the Fetch API, and then we're going to hit a GraphQL endpoint which someone's put together for us kindly, and then we're going to use another query against it, and then that is run when the page loads rather than at build time. So we've got to do some stuff with, is it loading, isn't it, and then just render out, a placeholder component while we wait for it to update, and then again we're just going to render out our components here. So in this case, we are going to get that flash of waiting for the information to come in. So third one is the unstructured data. So I don't really think I've got a great example of this, but for unstructured data, you want to bring in your endpoint at build time. You can do it at runtime as well. In this example, I'm using the source nodes from Gatsby, and I'm actually bringing this into the Gatsby data layer. You don't have to do it like this, but this is a good way to have your data available via the GraphQL Explorer. As you show of hands, who's used the GraphQL Explorer? Anyone want to see what it is? How you get your data from it? Anyone interested? Right. So no one's really covered it, but there is this. Is it like that? GraphQL? Or is it a forward slash? There we go. Cool. So what we've got here, trial by country. If this is anything relating to this data. When I fired up this on my dev server, it brought in that information from the Gatsby node here. Gatsby nodes will start up when you sort of build your site. And in this example, we're loading the first 10 results from this CoinLaw Bitcoin API, which is a REST endpoint, and then we are shoving that into the data layer in Gatsby. So if we take a look over here, we've got it brought in under all CoinLaw. I'm not sure how you actually get it to give it a decent name. It's just how it's generated. And then what we can do in here is go into the nodes, the edges. No, sorry, it's the nodes. And then get the data. So let's get the name and the rank and the price, USD. And then it just brings you back your JSON for the first 10 results in that API. So using that at runtime and at build time. So here, this is just making it and adding it to the GraphQL data layer. And then for this mixed data, this uses both the Gatsby data layer here. I'll just put in everything from that the GraphQL Explorer, whacked it all in there, and then again at build time, Gatsby will put that data, make it available to our page here via data, and then we can work with it here. But I've also put in just a check for the runtime data. So if we look at the last time it was built, I'm guessing this has been running all day. Take a look here, and then go back to run and build time date, for example. So 530 minutes. So this is going to check when the last time it was run, and if it's more than 10 minutes old, then it's just going to refresh that data from the API. So then you're going to get that flash where it's waiting for. You could put in your placeholders here, but didn't have time for that. What we can do is go to where I've got this running, it should be here, and kill it, kick it off again, and then we'll get fresh data, and then we can see the data as it is. So this is a bit of a crappy example because the data is changing all the time. But if it's something where you don't need data being updated every minute, then it should be fine. I think in here, I've just got it as if it's greater than 10 minutes, then just go off and get it from the get it at runtime. But here you see when we refresh it, this is just the build time data, so we're not waiting for it to load. And then obviously we're going to have to wait some time for that just to check this. Time since build less than 1. Is this going to break it? Yeah. Yeah, because basically you've got to wait for a minute to elapse for it to load. So that's some ways you can do that. Yeah, I mean, personally, I've always got an endpoint to hit, so I just do it at build time. I haven't done anything in Gatsby where you need to have stuff updating every 10 minutes, but I think with like the runtime example, it's not a great hit personally, and you also get your the base of your site, your header, your footer, anything else rendered straight away while you're waiting for your content to load. So it's not a massive hit in my opinion. So what else have we got to talk about? I don't know. So we're taking a look. What have we got? We've got slides. Yes, I think we're going to wrap up really. How long's that been? How long? 2 minutes. 2 minutes. We'll do a Q&A. So you can get the example here, which is just all those bits we put in there. You can get me on GitHub. Questions? Everyone's sleepy after pizza, aren't they? Yes.
Do you think any of them are? Any of them could be. If you needed something like you say, if you were actually doing that Bitcoin example where you wanted the data up to date all the time,
yeah.
Would you in that case do it at runtime, or do you think you could do?
I mean, if it needs to be updated all the time, I probably wouldn't use React. Use a canvas and just update that rather than smash the Beadle. But it depends. I mean, when you say all the time, is it like seconds? Is it?
Maybe not seconds, but just if you were to use, I don't know, a website where, if you think about something like Facebook, where every time you refresh, there's probably going to be new news feeds. There's probably going to be new.
I mean,
do you think any of them are?
There was a time where I thought we could do it like the best of both worlds, where we could have it like build time data and runtime data, and then you just have to do a lot of working out what's where. But it depends on, the great answer is it depends on how you want to use it, I guess. So I don't see any drawbacks from that as you would to like a proper like a fully fledged just React app with a Node backend. You could do the same in Gatsby. So just doing that to sort of highlight how you would get the data really.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important the way you should be using the Gatsby. A Facebook feed type of thing. You might dedicate to a specific React app. Gatsby site might be the marketing page that sits in front of it.
Yeah.
It's about picking the right tools for the right job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You surprised?
Right?
You would be surprised.
Yeah. No, totally agree. But
I think that's just kind of what I was trying to get my head around, because I know originally when the buzz around Gatsby came around, it was very much sold as almost like a static site
absolutely, yeah.
version.
Yeah.
And I believe that's not necessarily the case.
No, they dropped a bollock with that.
They're doing, but I'm just trying to get my head around what kind of projects when I'm starting them, I'd say I'd definitely use Gatsby for that. Does it really matter? Does it have its downsides?
I think SEO is an important thing.
Yeah.
For SEO, if you want some kind of, you can have that dynamic data coming in, but if you just dedicate a single page app, you're not going to get to really benefit from the SEO type things. Even Google now claim they can crawl page
Yeah.
well, I don't quite believe that just yet. So
The thing
might
is-
use Gatsby to gain those benefits because like, you can write to the header and it's fairly friendly with Google.
The thing is, it's React. It's just an abstraction on React. So if you've got something you want to show in a view with data, then you can use that. And like what Tom was saying, is you get your SEO as a benefit out of it as well. Yes. So.
Yeah, I guess I was just looking for if there's any downsides or situations with certain types of.
Absolutely. I mean, I was discussing with these guys from the Telegraph. If you've got a massive site, this isn't on the data loading aspect, it's just the sheer size of it. You'd want all that stuff pre-compiled. You've got all these articles. You'd want all that pre-compiled, wouldn't you? So you could just access it. But if you've got content creators on there adding stuff all the time, you're going to need to rebuild the site all the time. So this is where I think Ilesh was talking about earlier with the incremental builds. We have all your data as is, and then just the content that changes updated. I'm not sure how far away that is really, but that's, I mean, once you get that done, then there's other bits in Gatsby where, say for, I showed you the examples with the the GraphQL queries. You can't really pass parameters into them, so you're just left getting everything and then just working with it on the client. Whereas there is parts of the API, like the page component, where you can pass variables to it for certain things, but that's at build time. I think there was some, what's the new React API called? Spence. They did some work with that where you could pass in variables, but I think that's been shelved for now. But once that gets done, incremental builds, then, I mean, and it's React, it's a view layer. It's just got a lot of stuff comes with it. And like I said, with the plugins, you name it, there's usually a plugin for it, or someone's making one for it. So it's very versatile as an app thing.
Yeah.
Yes?
If I can add totally more of a comment than a question, but something that really expanded my view on Gatsby is that really you have a static site, but you can redeploy it whenever you want. So for instance, you can have it used into webhooks. So I run this meetup and we have this list of attendees, and whenever an attendee signs up through the form, we just have that new data and redeploy the site, and then it updates. And that way you sort of like get your cake and eat it too, depending on the size of updates.
Yeah, I should have mentioned more about all the services and like, when they talk about the concept mesh, it's basically just any API you can bring in and build stuff with it as well. So like there's services like Netlify and now.sh, they have these GitHub integrations where you get a good CI/CD pipeline coming out of it basically, where you can just start editing your stuff. And there's CMS as well from Netlify, where you can edit stuff on the client, and then like what Laura was saying, fire off a hook and then build the site. But obviously you don't get the real-time stuff like what Ilish was talking about earlier. Anyone else? Cool.